You are now live.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sage Turner, Chair of the Asheville Regional Housing Consortium. I'd like to welcome you to our June 23rd Asheville Regional Housing Consortium meeting. We're streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the city's website on the virtual engagement hub link. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone. You can dial 855-925-2801. You'll be prompted for a meeting code, and that code is 8763. For those of you out there listening and joining us today, welcome. I'm going to go through and do a little roll call for attendance. It looks like we have pretty light attendance today, but let's capture who's here. So board members and staff, as I call your name, could you please say a quick hello? Let's see. I see Kate filling in for Alan.
Morning.
Good morning. Ben.
Good morning, everybody.
Good. And Jennifer, are you with us yet?
Good morning, everyone.
Great. And I see Matt Cable. Are you with us?
Yes, good
There he
morning.
is. Good morning. And Mayor Blakely? Good morning.
Member, and I'll let you know I'm filling in for Eric Roofer as the alternative, and I unfortunately will have to hop off a little early.
That's okay. I think we're going to finish very early. One of our big items is a discussion. We don't have a lot of folks, so it might move quickly. And I do have a message from Robin Merrill, our vice chair, who is trying to get in, just having some internet connectivity issues. And then let me go ahead and introduce the city staff that are with us. Community Development Division Manager, Jonathan Jones.
Good morning.
Morning. And I believe our Community and Economic Development Director, Nikki Reed, will be possibly joining us a little late, but she's not going to be with us at the beginning. And I think that is everybody. We'll give Robin a second. She said she's trying. Get to our agenda. All right, so a lot of absences. We do not have quorum. So the first official agenda item we have is to approve 4 sets of minutes, but without a quorum, we can't do that. So we'll just continue that to the next agenda. All those meeting minutes are attached to the agenda if you wish to review them. Again, they're just action minutes, so they're not large discussions. If you need to review any of the minutes or meetings themselves, for those of you listening at home, you can go online to the city's website or to our YouTube channel and find previous meetings. So without a quorum, we'll move past item number 1 and on to number 2, which is a North Carolina Leadership Forum on affordable housing discussion. Robin and I, we're going to tag team this. So I'm hoping she'll be able to join us. But for those of you who don't know about this, maybe give me a little show of hands. Does everybody know about the North Carolina Leadership Forum? Anybody heard of it? It's in partnership with Duke. Oh, good. So, good. Mayor Blakely has. So apparently, it's only been a few years since this group started, and they do a statewide study on a particular topic once a year, and then they kind of comb through the areas in the state to find leaders in that subject, convene them for about 6 months for 6 whole one-day meetings on the topic. And the outcomes are usually some kind of policy initiatives or some kind of momentum on a certain subject, depending. So this was the 5th cohort. They call them cohorts, and this was specific to only Western North Carolina. We had 34 regional leaders, and the goal was how to increase access to adequate housing in Western North Carolina. And I'm telling you about this group because it pertains to all of our counties and city and our own initiatives and funding, but there's also an action that came from that 6-month process that ties into this particular commission, or could possibly. So we spent 6 months visiting different cities in Western North Carolina and meeting with, I think the 34 people were a compilation of things like the mayors, like Mayor Blakely was present at this forum, and the county commissioners or the city councilors. Oh, we've got Robin joining, great. Some of them were the university chancellors for those areas. We had folks from Dogwood Health Trust and the Chamber of Commerce. So just kind of a wide array of representation around housing. And the goal was to first spend a little time analyzing what all our communities had in common related to housing troubles, whether it was high occupancy, low vacancy, or not enough units, or short-term rentals came up, missing middle, that kind of stuff. So a lot of the typical planning initiatives around housing. And then what we did was kind of drill down into what was actually achievable, like what things have so many roadblocks, like state legislation, that we couldn't, as this little group, make them move. So we've sorted through and came up, I believe the outcome was maybe 6 initiatives. And I won't go too deep into all of our findings, but what did happen at the wrap-up meeting, which was about 6 weeks ago, was the room was concerned about how do we continue this discussion. We've learned a lot, we've got these great ideas, but how does it move forward? And it was decided that we needed a group that had representation from all these counties and so on that could continue to meet on a regular basis and discuss housing for their regions. And so someone at the last minute was like, I think we have a regional consortium that does that. And we do. So what we're talking about today is whether or not we as a group feel like we can somehow support this other like larger conversation of housing, or if we could be one of many of other groups, like the Land of Sky came up. And the point being how to keep moving policy and initiatives and discussions forward and how to support each other in our different communities. And one of the ideas was to create almost like a database of policies and initiatives in different cities, almost just a Google Drive kind of resource. And we may be willing to do that on the city's end. You know, we're the participatory jurisdiction, so it kind of falls on Asheville, but I'm being very careful not to create situations that would create work for staff. So what we're looking at here is whether or not this group even wants to take on some discussion about this, wants to be an optional hub for information, or if we want to be one of the cogs in a wheel of information. So we'll be looking for a little input on that. And I wanted to give Robin a chance to say she's here, and I see Forrest joined us. Robin, are you good with connection? I don't see your camera on yet. Well, Forrest, welcome. We'll add you to the list.
Morning.
Yeah, great. I don't know. Let me check what our quorum number is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We can do this. We can approve minutes. We have 8. Great. Forrest, thank you for joining us. Assuming Robin can get activated here. I know she had some thoughts to share about the consortium. Yeah, she's still having trouble. Well, just based on what I said, I mean, what do you guys think? Like we're the only body that meets regularly that represents so much of Western North Carolina specific to housing. It's a hot topic across all levels of city and rural planning, but it's not moving it forward. Doesn't seem to have like a body that continues to push on things. So those of you who hadn't heard about the NCLF, or maybe Mayor Blakely, who was part of it, what are your thoughts? If he's still with us. Robin. Oh, there's Robin. Hi, Robin. Oh.
I'm here for real now.
All right. For real, for real. Great. Welcome, Robin. And that gives us quorum too. So we'll back up to minutes later. But I don't know if you could hear me. I was just kind of doing a brief overview of NCLF and how they operate and the cohorts. I didn't really go into the details that we, created from the group. But were you able to hear me talking at all, or you just?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Anything you'd like to add?
I think you did a really good job. I would just add that, one of the things that based on people's comments and my own experience, it was really great to be able to communicate across difference. There were people from both political parties, people with a variety of different experiences and perspectives. And they set this group up in a way, in the work they had us do, to build some relationship that allowed us to understand better where each other are coming from. And I found that very useful in the conversation, and the reminders of the commonality of many of our goals was really helpful. Did we all agree? Absolutely not. But we didn't have to further the discussion, to really come up with some ideas of ways we can work together, ways we could further the conversation. And I really appreciated that in our otherwise polarized world.
True.
And I would appreciate hearing what Mayor Blakely has to say if he'd like to.
He's been on and off with his camera too. He may be having internet trouble too. Matt, you look like you wanted to say something.
Just for clarification, and make sure I understand it, what is I guess the request for what we would need to do? Could you just clarify that again?
There's not really a request. Robin and I had just closed out the NCLF before our previous ARHC meeting. And the call was kind of made at the last minute of our wrap up of, we just need some kind of body that can continue the conversation, continue to corral us and can hold information for us, or a resource page. And I guess the question is, do we want to be that body? Do we have any interest in taking on more than, or keeping on an agenda as a discussion item, or hearing updates from those folks on policy initiatives that could be statewide? What is that? Is it education for us? Are we just one group and we offer to be a hub for information? To me, that's a real easy thing, just because we are the PJ. Like, imagine, Matthew, in your work, you do extensive stuff for performance and stuff for housing. And then we get into these more rural communities that have never even seen a pro forma. They're getting their first LIHTC projects. So they're not even sure how to evaluate them fully. Are they great? What does it mean for the community? They're dealing with lots of pushback from residents. So I think in that case, like, Brevard community is a great example. Maureen, their mayor, was part of the NCLF, and we went and visited, and she was talking about just the troubles they have in getting multifamily. And in this case, I would think that some of the work you do at Buncombe County, just them being able to go and see how Buncombe County handled it without having to dig it through your website, find the committee, whatever. If we just had a hub for how all of these cities and governments have been handling projects, it would be a helpful resource, I think. That part seemed really simple to me, because we could just drop things as they land and happen. But the rest, as far as being a continual resource or hosting things, to me implies that staff time is needed and more meeting time. And that I'm a little hesitant on. Does that help?
Yeah, I think that was my concern. I think only because the consortium, obviously, we pull in funds that help support the city staff, right? Like, that provides the staffing to the consortium. And I know there have been capacity issues before, because that amount of funding is really limited and probably not substantial enough to support the amount of staff support that we require for the consortium's work. So yeah, I think, things that aren't going to be burdensome to them. My only concern, as you're stating, is anything that might become burdensome to the city staff and need to change, how they're funded, or that there's not enough funding to support the activities. So, we struggle even as an entity that works in this area more extensively, and we have local funds that we're committing, and we have staffing to have resources. So I think anytime you can create resources is always a good opportunity.
Yeah. One of my big takeaways too is that some of these surrounding rural communities, they're just now stepping into some of the stuff that we have been doing in Buncombe County and Asheville for about 10 years. So, if they can learn from our adventures, I don't want to say mistakes, but they can learn from our good projects, learn from our hiccups, and I don't see any problem with that. And I think I think Jonathan was probably very thankful to hear that other people also like, please don't make it staff work, because that's really not the goal. We're just talking resources. Anybody else have any thoughts on that while we're kind of just discussing? Kate, Forrest, anybody?
So we, a few of us from Transylvania County were able to hop on the School of Government last week, did an affordable housing webinar. I'm not sure if anybody here was able to hop. Oh, okay, great. So we, at the end of the day, we talked with Land of Sky representatives, and they seemed willing to help where they could. So as a potential additional resource, there were also some. So like you mentioned, this is relatively new when you're talking about big projects. And so they shared some really helpful information that I would be happy to share with the consortium. And one thing was the county profiles from the North Carolina Housing Coalition, just to, it was helpful to see real numbers about our community, for example, but they've got obviously every county in the state profiled. And so I would love to see this consortium play a role in something like that.
Yeah, do you remember when the county, so Matthew, the county came and kind of gave us their update on their comprehensive planning? That's kind of what I'm thinking. Like, we could be a resource or a hub for data and documents and projects and online database, but we can also be hearing updates from critical initiatives or things in the community that are impacting our region and counties. And that would just be, making time on an agenda, extending our meetings a little bit to hear more information. but not inducing work on staff, right? So, I mean, that would be a great example, Kate. Like we could have an update from that particular 2 hour, whatever it was called. And it was informative, right? And sometimes just basics. So some of the stuff we'd already know, but to summarize it and say this happened and here's another opportunity and let's put all these documents in the database, I think would be suitable. It would be helpful, maybe. Keep us more in tune with what's happening with larger governments too. Oh, there's Mayor Blakely. You want to share anything?
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't ignoring you all. I had to step
No,
away
it's
for 2 seconds. No, I think coming out of the leadership forum, I think the bottom line was that housing is a regional issue, and we all agreed on that. And I think you all mentioned there's people from all different types of the spectrum, from different communities, rural, urban. Fletcher's obviously a more rural community, so I'm not sure exactly because I'm an alternate here. You know what exactly happens here every single time, but I'm familiar enough with this consortium to know, I guess, the baseline of what happens here. Nevertheless, I think you make a good point, council member, and that I think this could be a very useful space where we can talk about what's going on in each other's communities related to housing and learn from each other, because we're, obviously a community of 8,000 residents. We're obviously not Asheville, so we're not doing the same things that you all are doing. We're catching up. We're a little behind, but we still do have that same issue of housing and lack of, and particularly affordable and units even on the market. So coming here and having these constructive conversations and figuring out how we can make this a regional issue and support each other, I'm definitely on board with, and definitely don't want to make any more work for the city of Asheville staff, because I'm mindful of that and my staff as well.
Yeah, that's great.
One of the things that I had thought about is piggyback onto Buncombe County's presentation around their comprehensive plan, is that the other counties in the consortium are doing comp plans right now too.
Oh,
And it might be interesting to compare, contrast, maybe discuss, how is one planning to handle transportation, or something along those lines. They probably are all at different stages in development, but maybe something we could look at down the road.
great. Okay. Well, I know one step Rob and I agreed to do was, as the chair and vice chair, was to meet with Land of Sky. We've got a point of contact there that deals with housing, and to see if this is something they see themselves investing time and energy into. I guess I'm not entirely clear about their ability to, like, say if a legislative initiative came out of this and it was more of a political thing, I think that changes how Land of Sky would interact. But if there's just, maybe they want to be the hub of information for all the counties. Maybe that makes more sense than Asheville staff and us creating a Google Drive. So Rob and I are going to contact, I think her name is Erica, and maybe have lunch with her and kind of see where they're at with it. And Kate, to your point, sounds like they've already mentioned, we want to help somehow. So we'll kind of get the rundown there. And then maybe what we can do is at the next meeting, we'll just have a little update for you, or if I get anything in between now and then, I could email it out. But yeah, Robin, anything else you want to share about this topic? I mean, we put it on the agenda for 30 minutes, but.
This morning, I met with a group of housing advocates here in Buncombe County who are reviewing the City of Asheville's affordable housing plan from 2008 and looking for ways to advocate to revise some of those recommendations, move some of them forward. And it was actually really inspiring and energizing to be in that room and to talk about what happened in 2008 when that plan was created. And lots of things have changed. And in terms of our affordable housing picture, it's easy to say that things have gotten worse. But we're a community full of really great ideas and really passionate people around these issues. So I consider this group a part of that, a part of the puzzle picture in working on our affordable housing issues. So I'm grateful to be here. I was grateful to talk to that group this morning. And
they're so energized. I talk to them often, and they've got me. This is the 08 plan that they were talking about.
Yeah.
And the irony is that this plan has all the ideas that we should be doing. I could rewrite this plan. I could just go scratch out the 08 and say 2022, and it would still be applicable. And this would be a good example of something I would put in the document folder because it's actually really interesting. This was a task force that did this. It's not the city that took on this initiative. I mean, kind of, they appointed a task force and Robin was on it. I think were you the leader of it, Robin?
I wrote it.
You
I-
wrote it. But
I organized 2 committee meetings a week for 6 months.
well, it's interesting. So as the PJ, right, like we're the big city in all this, and our own housing study was written by a task force of volunteers, and the last edition was 08. If that says a lot, right? So, there's things to work on, documents to hold on to, and great points out there. And just having another group that is kind of working on them regionally, I think is helpful. So I'm fine to maybe after we meet with Land of Sky, we can just take the first step of where should this hub of information land, right? Maybe that's just the first step. And if no one else really has much to say about that, we can move on to the agenda and just know that we'll update you at the next meeting. Any other thoughts on this? Okay. I want to take us back up to the first item real quick now that we have quorum, because a couple folks joined us. And we have 4 sets of minutes to approve, and we can approve them all in one lump motion. So to spare us extensive roll call, I think that would be smart. So let me ask you if you have any comments or questions or changes to the May 25th, March 3rd, March 15th, March 23rd, and February 10th meeting minutes. Everybody get to review those action items. Any change? I mean, it should be pretty simple. If not, then maybe can someone make a motion to approve all? Oh, go ahead, Kate. Did you have a change?
Sorry, I just to clarify, are you looking at 5 sets of minutes or 4?
4.
Okay.
February 10th,
Okay.
March 15th, March 23rd, May 25th. Should be on
Okay.
the,
Sorry, I thought I heard another date, so I just wanted to make sure.
Oh.
Thanks.
No. Yeah, I was jumping around a little. So those last 4 meetings. And if anybody has a motion,
Sage, this has been, and I'll move to approve.
thank you. Can I get a second?
Second from Forrest.
Thank you. And I'm going to do a roll call vote. I'm going to do it in order of those of you on my screen. So Ben,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Jennifer, are you with us?
Yes.
Great. Matthew,
Yes.
Mayor Blakely,
Yes.
Forrest,
Yes.
Robin,
Yes.
myself, I. All right, great. We have approved those minutes. We have one more item on the agenda before public comment. And that is item number 3 for those of you listening at home. And this is an administrative update from, I believe, Jonathan Jones, our director, will be kicking that off. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Thank you very much. So 2 updates and maybe a little status update from the community development team here at Asheville. I guess I'll start out with that piece first. I do appreciate the comments during the discussion about the North Carolina Leadership Forum and the sensitivity to staff workload at the city right the moment. I do want to let you all know we have 2 team members, Nancy Williams and Mary Brooke Cox, who have taken other positions and in other organizations. Nancy will be joining Buncombe County here soon, and Mary Brooke will be working with a consulting firm called the Cloudburst Group. We're really excited for them, but it also means that our team is going to be lean for a little while. So I appreciate the sensitivity there as we start to make some adjustments. Both Mary Brooke and Nancy were great help on a lot of the home projects that this consortium has funded and helped oversee. So I do want to acknowledge them, as part of this group meeting, and thank them for their service to the city and the community. So with that, moving along to our update for Mars Hill and Marshall. I think in one of our previous meetings, we mentioned that there was a message from HUD, a note from HUD saying that we needed to correct the Mars Hill and Marshall membership as part of the consortium. And that process took place a long time ago. And any time that we've had a new member join the consortium, HUD's process is that we have each member signed a joint partnership agreement. So this originally took place back in like 2008, 9, 2010, depending on which member joined at which time. But part of that process was having each member community sign the joint partnership agreement, and then each of the other existing members also had to co-sign that agreement. So when Mars Hill and Marshall joined, we have signatures from them, but somewhere in the process, the other co-signing process didn't happen. So that's what HUD brought to our attention, is that what we needed to do was go back and have each of the member communities also sign an amended membership agreement or joint partnership agreement to make Mars Hill and Marshall fit into that process. At the same time, we also went back through the requirements for the membership, and HUD does allow the consortium to assign the city as the lead entity and the participating jurisdiction to assign us the responsibility of amending that agreement. So the consortium could choose to have the city, to empower the city to add new members when that's necessary. But the caveat there is that in itself would also require that each member sign an amendment to make that possible. So it would be great if at this point the city could just go in and administratively update that joint partnership agreement to include Mars Hill and Marshall. But the next step that we are looking at either way is that each member community is going to have to sign off on an amendment to the joint partnership agreement. We weren't planning explicitly to have a quorum today. We included the minutes on the agenda in case that was possible. We could do some housekeeping. So I don't know that there's any particular action that we need to take or have ready to take right now related to adding Mars Hill and Marshall, but I did want to give you that update so that at our next meeting, if we need to take some action and start distributing some agreements to have routed in your communities, we can go ahead and sort of set that up and give you all time to consider what path forward you'd like to take there, whether it's simply adding Mars Hill and Marshall or simultaneously including the city as empowering the city to make those administrative changes in the future when and if we have new members.
Any thoughts on that, consortium members?
So I guess I have a procedural question, because in my time on the consortium, I don't think we've done this, right? And so like agreeing to be part of the consortium is made at the government entity level. So I guess historically, is this like an item that we would need to take to our boards for approval? I don't know that, I'm the appointed representative by, our government, right? So from us, from a procedural standpoint, what would you anticipate, or what historically would the government agencies need to do? Because we're going to need to have a mechanism to consent to the addition. I think largely at a staff level, I don't see an issue with adding the two entities and then giving that administrative ability to the city and taking care of that all at once. But it's more, I guess I just have a kind of a question about what it looks like for us as each individual consortium member, from what you understand of like past activity in this area.
So from the signatures on the agreements that we've received before, it looks like it would be the authorized representative of your organization or board. So if it was a council or commission that would have this basically the same level of authority to enter into any other contract or agreement on behalf of the organization. So that might look a little different for each community, but I think that's really the baseline would be like I don't know that it would be the individual representatives on this call, but it would be the authorized representative for the organization. But it might be a little different for everybody.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, it's just kind of a procedural question. I think it makes sense for us as a consortium because we'd be informed by the staff, and
Exactly.
we're responsible for kind of understanding what the work is and reporting it back to our governments that the consortium's doing. So it seems to make sense. And I would, be supportive of us trying to do both things at the same time, adding the new and then creating that capacity for the consortium staff, being city staff, to carry out that administrative function going forward.
Okay.
Any others?
I guess
Right.
this is for, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm wondering what would be the authority? I mean, we would be giving that authority to add others at any time, I assume with consultation. What about removal? Those kinds of, I guess that's my question. What would be the authorization fully?
The authorization in the HUD regs just reference, I believe it just references the addition of new members. The bylaws mention removal and any entity that chooses not to participate. Matter of fact, we sent out letters last month allowing any community that didn't want to continue to participate would have the option to opt out when HUD asks us to recertify as a consortium every 3 years. So I don't know that there's a need for the city to have any responsibility for removing members, but it's more the administrative task of adding members without having to route those agreements and collect all of the signatures in the future. But that certainly wouldn't be something that I think the city would have any interest in doing without consultation, and really just poor form.
As long as and I think we could address that, as long as all of the consortium is consulted. And then one observation I'll make that I've noticed on a number of things in government, our governing boards are farther and farther removed from everything that goes on in their local governments in many cases. And part of me likes there's a housing consortium in front of them every now and then. We've got to do that each on our own. But I think that over time, there are so many entities that they can just, well, staff's handling that. And staff, I love that. I don't want them handling any more than that. But it is not something that I think needs to be a deal breaker on that. But it's just something that I think could be lost if we're not having them remember how they got into it. Because I think regionally, just our earlier conversation, I think our regional collaboration is different than it was 30 years ago, where just in Land of Sky, you had your county commissioners from each county talking to each other on a regular basis. That quit happening at some point. That's part of the world, but I just think that people remembering how they got where they got can be important. But I think that's a bigger problem than just this. So it's not worth us figuring out. Just an observation.
Good point.
And Forrest, just to jump in and kind of tag in on that idea, I think, and again, it's a staffing issue, and I always hate to ask consortium staff to do anything else, but a really great thing for me would be kind of a summary of the consortium's activities, to be able to say, this is what we did over the last, fiscal year or whatever. Even like a one-pager to explain like who's part of the consortium, this is the activities that were undertaken, these are the projects that were supported, or whatever. Because it is hard to summarize the work of the consortium and elevate the importance of its work kind of on your own in brief conversation. So having a resource like that would be a great point for us, I think, moving forward.
I agree. And so the rest of the boards and committees at the city of Asheville do an annual report. And like if we approved funding or something, we would link to those projects and so on. I wonder if that's something we can do. In the past, I know at city boards, it's usually the staff liaison and the chair. So that would be Jonathan and I. But, and Jonathan's got plenty to do. So I don't mind looking at kind of a wrap-up document myself. It would actually help me. I mean, I was new to this consortium when I joined council, so it might even help me get my brain around how effective we are. I didn't I was told when I started, it was like, we meet 4 times a year and we dole out this funding. Well, we're meeting a lot more. And then that home arc, which we're going to get another update on in a minute, came in. So there's just more going on, I think, than any of us thought would be going on. So I think a good summary document is helpful and then can also be accessible for us to take to our local governments and share updates from. So I like that idea. Any other thoughts? Okay, Jonathan, you got the feedback you need on that?
I believe so. I will, we'll go ahead and pull together an amendment that would include both the addition of Mars Hill and Marshall, as well as allowing the city to make those any administrative updates in the future.
Great. And maybe what we'll do, if since we'll be voting on that in the future and we're missing quite a few members today, is if we could, I guess we'll have a draft out, but maybe I'll send an email to everyone and say, hey, we had an interesting discussion about some new activity. Go ahead and watch the recording if you can. So we don't have to rediscuss it next time. I'll do that administratively. Okay. I think that's all for 3A. Are you ready to move on to 3B, Jonathan? For those of you listening at home. Okay, that was the home ARP update. Sorry, I'm just doing cue for the people listening. Hundreds of people are watching this. It's interesting. So yeah, home ARP update, 3B.
Sure. So we are still sort of in the recalibration process with home ARP. We have processed, we posted the home ARP position and had reposted that and had some candidates respond. And the timeout on our system for having that position posted had expired. So the city is working through the applicant pool that we've currently received and looking to repost that just to see if we can garner some more interest and maybe distribute that job listing through some other networks, probably even reshare it with this committee to share with anybody else that might be interested. Can't say that we got a lot of responses to the initial posting. So as we're looking at that, we want to make sure that we keep that in motion, as well as looking at any other options that we have. I know the city and Buncombe County are working with the National Alliance to End Homelessness to do an assessment here on the needs and the gaps in our community, and seeing if there's any way that we can, sort of segue from that study, build out on that process to help inform home ARP. So sort of reevaluating how we can collect all the relevant information to build this home ARP plan with what we've got. Yes, Sage?
Well, and that, I mean, this is the big consultant for the entire region, right? So it actually overlays these other counties as well. It's not just Buncombe, right? This is the big Dogwood funded study.
I think right at the moment, the focus of that has been on Buncombe, but I think that's part of the question that we want to look at is to see, how can we branch out and how can we kind of look at this at a larger level, and potentially include some home ARP funding in hiring a consultant and participating in that process a little broader. So,
do you know the timeline on that study?
I don't. I believe we're looking across maybe 6 months for the work with the National Alliance, but that's what I have off the top of my head.
Okay, so we could have another long winter like that. Okay. All right. Sorry to interrupt my question. Go ahead. Go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's still progress being made, but we had to kind of change and with staffing where it is right now, trying to make those adjustments so that we can continue to get the work done that we need to with our CDBG and homework, as well as start focus on home ARP. Thankfully, home ARP does not have a fixed deadline that we have to submit our allocation plan the same way we do with the annual action plan. So there is some flexibility there. We don't want to waste time, but we do want to make sure that we get this right.
Sorry, my mute did not work. It looks like we lost Mayor Blakely. He had to leave early too. Well, so tell me about sorry, because I got distracted by text. So this application period, if we have to go back out, like what's the goal for hiring? How far back are we pushing this? Because we had originally said July. Here we are.
Yes, it's given the limited number of responses, and working through those applications, it takes time for us to hire. I'm hopeful that we can have somebody, within the next couple of months lined up and ready to go. And that's also why we're looking at the possibility of, pulling in some outside help with consultants just to help we started some of the work, that Brian, was doing some outreach and planning there, and just see if we can't pick up that torch and move forward. That said, we had originally projected to have a meeting in July for an update. I don't know that that's going to make a lot of sense just for home art. So probably look for a more substantial update at the September meeting that we were planning on.
So let's say we get some better applicants, they get hired and onboarded. It's probably August, September at the earliest. Then they've got a lot of work to do to prep. And then we've got to come to us and finalize things and send out an application, have an open period, all this stuff. So we're really looking at spring, right?
At the earliest.
Okay. And I think that's important that we, state that because, this is going to be money that can be partnerships and, last minute applications aren't great for this kind of thing. So these partners out in the community that may be seeking these funding, we probably need to alert them, not that we know who they are entirely, but the ones that are obvious that, $4.7 million is going to be not allocated this year and instead next year. And that might have some impacts on applicants and projects queuing up. So I don't know if that might be worthy of a CAPE announcement, right? Once we have a better timeline, because if I'm working on one of these projects and hoping to apply for some of this money and it's not this year, I would need to know. My project would need to know. So we may need to actually set some more definitive future dates and say we're not dealing with this till next year. Just out of fairness to projects and people building. We can talk about that a little more. Anything else you want to share about our home art updates?
That's all we've got for right now.
Well, we know that hundreds of people are listening, just actively, listening everywhere we say. So if you're out there and you want this job, come on down. Network, help us find someone. Okay. Well, we have we're doing pretty good on time, and that is our last item on the agenda. I did not see that anybody had public comment ahead of time. Christina, are you with us? And do we have any of those hundreds of people trying to call with great ideas? She's trying. We can't hear you. I don't believe anybody's on the line, though. Christina, you there?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, you're just really quiet.
Okay.
There you go.
Strange. We do not have any public comments.
Okay. So the only thing left for us is to adjourn. I appreciate everybody making time for this meeting. We weren't really going to do. We added it as our, fill in to have this discussion about NCLF and stuff. So, but we got our minutes approved for 4 meetings. We had our little discussion. We've got our updates. No public comment, and we can all go on with our day. Thank you for your time today, and we are adjourned. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
See you soon.